The Red Scare. We tend to think of it as this moment of mass panic, right? A witch hunt led by a few power-hungry guys. But what if it was something more? What if it was the deliberate construction of a system of fear? A system whose architecture, well, it might still be with us today. Today, we're diving into Clay Risen's incredible book to understand the Red Scare not as a scare, but as a machine. Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world, one book at a time. Picture this. It's January 1946. A charity secretary, Helen Reed Bryan, is sitting all alone before the House Committee on Un-American Activities, HUAC. She's been called in over her organization's records. When she tries to read a statement to defend herself, she's immediately shut down by Mississippi Congressman John Rankin. And just like that, Helen Reed Bryan becomes the very first person held in contempt of Congress during the Red Scare, the first of thousands whose lives were about to be completely shattered. Now, Helen Reed Bryan's story isn't just a personal tragedy. It's really a window into the main idea we're exploring today. The Red Scare wasn't some random, temporary panic. No, it was the construction of a new American system, a whole bureaucratic machine designed to manage fear and, ultimately, to consolidate power. So how in the world did this happen? Well, the book argues it was born from the collision of two massive forces. On one hand, you had this simmering culture war happening at home, a conservative movement that really saw Roosevelt's New Deal, with its expanding government and social programs, as some kind of foreign, un-American threat. And on the other hand, bam, the Cold War explodes onto the scene, creating this atmosphere of absolute existential terror. The Red Scare was born right in the chaotic middle where these two forces crashed into each other. And this collision, it didn't just create panic. Oh no, it created paperwork. It forged new rules, new agencies. It turned fear into a formal, bureaucratic process. And the whole system started right at the very top. In 1947, President Truman signs an executive order creating the Federal Loyalty Program. I mean, look at this. It was a massive undertaking. Millions of federal employees were screened, and even the slightest hint of sympathetic association could trigger a full-blown FBI investigation into your entire life. But here's the real kicker. Look at step 4. The accused often had no right to see the evidence against them or to even confront their accusers. This wasn't about justice, it was a purge. So, after all that, what was the result? After this massive, intrusive system conducted almost 5 million background checks and ruined thousands of careers, the number of actual spies they uncovered was 0. A big, fat 0. And that tells you everything you need to know about the program's real function. It wasn't about catching spies. It was about enforcing ideological conformity. Now, the engine of this whole system was J. Edgar Hoover's FBI. Hoover, who was an absolute master bureaucrat, basically transformed the Bureau into a domestic surveillance state. He used this huge network of informants to build files on millions of Americans, turning gossip, hearsay, and who you hung out with into a permanent government record. One congressman actually called it terror by index cards, that chilling knowledge that the government was always watching and that a file with your name on it was probably sitting in a drawer somewhere in Washington. And this system, it was contagious. The logic of these loyalty tests just spread like a virus from the federal government into the most absurd corners of American life. I mean, if you wanted to be a professional wrestler in Indiana, you had to swear you weren't a communist. To get a fishing license in New York, yep, you had to take an oath. The fear wasn't just in Washington, D.C. It was in every city hall and county office across the country. Okay, so from our perspective today, this all just seems completely insane, right? But to really understand the Red Scare as a system, we have to ask the hard question. Why did this feel so necessary to so many people at the time? Why did this kind of repression feel justified? Well, the answer lies in the intense, escalating pressure of the early Cold War. I mean, in 1949, Americans suddenly learned the Soviet Union had the atomic bomb. Our nuclear monopoly was gone. In that same year, the world's most populous country, China, falls to communism. And by 1950, American soldiers were actually fighting and dying against communist forces in Korea. The threat wasn't some abstract idea. It felt immediate, global, and absolutely terrifying. Imagine a pressure cooker, but with no release valve. All of this global anxiety was just building and building inside the American psyche with absolutely nowhere to go. I mean, you couldn't punch Stalin. You couldn't vote Mao out of office. So the pressure turned inward and it ruptured our civil liberties, turning into a witch hunt against fellow citizens. And this is the exact mindset that allowed the whole system to flourish. The book explains that it was simply taken as a given, that communism was this absolute, all-powerful evil, and that belief created a logic where the normal rules just didn't apply. Absolute vigilance was required, and if that meant that some innocent people got sacrificed along the way, people like Helen Reed Bryan, well, that was considered a regrettable but necessary price for national survival. So, eventually, the era faded. McCarthy was censured, the wars ended, and the immediate panic subsided. But the system itself, this whole infrastructure of suspicion that had been built, it never really went away. Rezin closes his book with this really powerful quote from Albert Camus' novel, The Plague. And the idea is that the germ of political hysteria, it never truly dies. It can lie dormant for years, just biding its time in our institutions, our laws, and our political culture, waiting for the right conditions to emerge all over again. And that leaves us with a lingering and, honestly, a pretty chilling question. The Red Scare created a blueprint for a system of fear, a machine of loyalty lists, mass surveillance, and guilt by association. When a society builds a system like that, can it ever be truly dismantled, or does it just lie dormant, waiting for a new name and a new target? For the full long-form deep dive into this book and its ideas, follow the link in the description. If you enjoyed these explainers, please subscribe and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.